So today we're going to learn about genetics, and I know this is a new topic to a lot of you. You may have heard about it in a TV show or a movie you watched about sci-fi, and them talking about modifying different organisms genetically, such as Jurassic Park. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that. But this is a real thing. We're going to talk about this in science and how it is applied to your lives and how it shows who we are and the things that we do and the traits that we can see in each other and ourselves and the differences and similarities that we can see in each other no matter where we come from, what our background is, and who we are. So I don't expect a lot of you to know a lot of these definitions, so don't feel overwhelmed. Think that you need to know all of these right away. We're going to ease into the topic of genetics, and I want you to know that you do not need to know all these definitions. I just want to see where you're at. If you know any of these definitions, good. If you don't know any of them at all and you're completely clueless, that's totally fine. We're going to learn about these together. I just want to see what you know and give you a little refresher, if you have heard of these definitions, what they're about. So these are the definitions that I want you to write down, and I want you to write down the words and what you think they mean. I do not want to see anyone putting down, I don't know, or it's blank, right? You're getting credit for giving me an actual definition that you thought of yourself. And if you know the definition or you've heard of it and you can write down what you think it means, that's what I want, right? So you don't need to write down exactly what it means if you haven't heard of this before, but I want to have a definition for each of these words on the board. So now that you guys have written down a couple of definitions, we're going to move on to the actual definitions, and I'll teach you about those and what they actually mean. So the first one is genetics, the study of genetics, and this is looking at the hereditary and the traits that people pass on from generation to generation. So these are the things that we see in our genes, and basically our genes are what is inside our cells and inside of the cytoplasm and what is in the chromosome. So our chromosomes are what contain all of the information to make us who we are. And so genetics is studying those genes and what they possess to be able to express the traits that are seen in us today, like your skin color, your hair color, the shape of your eyes, the shape of your face, how tall you are, how short you are, whether you're a girl or a boy, all of these different things. So that's what genetics is. And the next word is hereditary. So heredity is the passing on of physical traits. So this is the study of the physical traits that we see. So genetics was the study of what's inside our chromosomes, the genes that are in place. And then heredity is the study of the physical traits that we see. So it's the study of the actual hair color, the study of the actual physical traits that we see, whether someone has no fingers and why they have that, or why they have no arm, etc., etc. So these are the different things that deal with heredity. And then alleles. So alleles are very important. So everybody in this room will have an allele for a certain gene. So an allele is basically it controls a characteristic that is seen in a person. So like, let's say there's one allele that controls the color of your hair. So the allele for blonde hair, that's the gene that controls the characteristics that are expressed in us. So that's what an allele is. It's a gene or a pair of genes that control certain characteristics that are seen in us or different organisms, plants as well. And then the last two on this page is homozygous. So things that are homozygous means that you have to have one trait, two identical alleles that are passed on from your parents. So let's say both of your parents have blonde hair and they both pass on. Your dad passes on his blonde allele and your mom passes on her blonde allele. So that means that you have two blonde alleles, so you're going to be blonde. So this means that you are homozygous blonde. So that means you have both alleles that are blonde. Heterozygous is possessing two different types of alleles for the same gene. So let's say you have a dad who has brown hair and you have a mom who has blonde hair. So your dad passes on the allele for brown hair and your mom passes on the allele for blonde hair. So this is different traits. Dad passed on the brown hair, mom passed on the allele for blonde hair. So this is heterozygous. You're heterozygous because they're different. They're not the same. So heterozygous, you'll have one that's different from the other, right? The first example, we had two of the same, two blonde traits that are passed on. That's homozygous. The second one, two different alleles. This is heterozygous. So now we're going to talk about recessive and dominant traits. So recessive traits means that it is not able to express itself unless there are two of the same allele. So this means that it has to come from both parents in order to be expressed, or else it's not shown. So let's say the blonde example. So let's say you get both blonde alleles from your parents, then you will have blonde hair. But let's say that for the second example, where your dad passed on the brown hair and your mom passes on the blonde hair, you will not have blonde hair because blonde hair has to have both of the alleles or else it will not show. So instead, you'll show the brown hair. And so a dominant trait just means that you need to have it for one parent. So the one where we talked about where your dad is brown hair and he gives you brown hair, your mom's blonde, she gives you the blonde allele, and you have brown hair. This means that brown hair is dominant because it's expressed in you. So you only need one of those from a parent. The same thing for other traits as well. So we'll look at this. So recessive, you need two, or else it won't show. It won't be expressed in you. And for dominant, you just need one, and it'll be expressed in the offspring. And so Punnett squares. Punnett squares is what we're going to look at today. This is very important for you in genetics. And this is how we determine what the offspring will look like. And we're going to look at that today. So this is how we determine the percentage of dominant traits, the percentage of recessive traits that we'll see in certain organisms today. And finally, Gregor Mendel. So Gregor Mendel, he is known as the father of genetics. He is very important because he did experiments with pea plants and he found a lot of these traits, these definitions that we looked at today, were founded by him through his experiments. So he dealt with pea plants, and we'll look at some of their seeds today, some of their plants today, and I'll pass this around for you guys to look at, to get a better look at it and to understand and to get a little more feel for what this actually means. So he did a lot of research with pea plants, and we're going to look at how he did this in a second. So this is his first. So this is what he looked at. He looked at the seed shape, whether it was round, wrinkled, or whether it was green or yellow, the color. So these are the seeds. I'm going to let you guys look around, pass this around, and you can look at them. And then we have the color of the flower, so purple or white, and then you have the height of the plant. So he looked at whether the flower was short or whether the flower was tall. And then he looked at the pod shape and the pod color. So he looked at all these things to see what parents, the pea parents, were passing on to their offspring. And so this is what a Punnett square looks like. So I'm going to explain some of the details about what a Punnett square is and what all the shapes and the colors mean. But first I want to look at these two examples right here. So a phenotype and a genotype. So a phenotype is what is seen. It's what you see in the person. So I think of the pH as physical. It's physically what is you can look at. So in a pea plant, you could physically see that it was yellow. You could physically see that it was white. You could physically see that it was purple. So these are the physical traits. It's a phenotype. The genotype is what we express the genes as. So we said a dominant trait. A dominant trait will be expressed by a capital letter. And a recessive trait will be expressed by a lowercase letter. So in this, we have genotypes, so those are the alleles that were being passed on by one parent or the other, like the blonde allele and the brown allele. These would be the genotypes. And we would express those by a capital B for dominant traits and a lowercase b for recessive traits. So in this, you will draw, or usually I'll give you a Punnett square. So you'll have a square with 4 little boxes in it. On the outside, you're going to put the parent's genotype. So I'll give you both the parents' genotypes. So for this one, we have the genotype of the dad. He is heterozygous purple, so that means he has a dominant trait and a recessive trait. So he has a big B and a little b. And the mother is also heterozygous, so this means she has big B and little b, and she is expressing purple. So purple is the dominant trait because big B is being expressed, and that's what's being shown. So we're going to see how to show the offspring in this. And to do this, we basically just put in a cross. So the first B is going to go all the way across these two. And then the second little b is going to go across. And then for the father, we're going to put a b in this square and a b in this square, and then et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to do a couple examples so that you guys know what you're doing and how we're able to show what each of these means. So in the first square, we have big B, big B. So that means that both of those are dominant. So it will be expressed as purple. The second one has big B, little b. So the